The ability to set successful picks is perhaps the most critical skill to be acquired by offensive players in two-player interactions. Within the read and react offense, there are 4 picks which must be successfully learned in order to execute the offense appropriately. However, these 4 picks share commonalities. The first of these commonalities involves the action of the person setting the pick. The individual setting the pick must attempt to expand that zone between the 2 defenders by giving a counter move away from the defender whom he or she intends to pick. Concurrently, the offensive player for whom the pick is being set should give a counter move away from the approaching pick in order to, number 1, turn the defender's back to the imminent pick, and also to allow him or her to get his or her foot plates inside of the defender and preclude the defender from turning outside and stopping the pick. The person for whom the pick is being set must attempt to pass very closely to the back of the chair of the picker. In this way, by minimizing that distance, the opportunity for the defender to move outside and stop the pick is precluded. Also, a pick must be considered a silent assassin. A successful pick and a well-executed pick makes no noise whatsoever because it is set with the side of the chair. In setting a successful pick, the individual who is picking must attempt to maintain his position or her position on the line between the defender being picked and the basket until such time as the defensive player that was originally on the picker switches off to pick up the other offensive player. In the read and react offensive system, there are 4 basic picks that can be set. 2 of these picks are operated or executed in planes that run parallel to the lane or to the sideline of the basketball court. Those 2 picks are the low-high, which is typified by a low post forward picking for a wing guard, and a high-low pick, which is typified by a guard going down low to pick for a forward. There's also a pick that occurs in the plane that runs parallel to the baseline. That's called a cross pick and is typified by a wing guard and a point guard cross-picking for each other. And finally, there's a pick called a reverse pick, which can happen in either plane and is often used as a follow-up pick when the first attempt was not successful. Now let's look at the mechanics of the low-high pick. In a low-high pick, which runs parallel to the sideline, the player located closest to the basket in the low post will come up to pick for the player located farthest from the basket out on the wing. In executing the low-high pick, both players concurrently will give fakes away from the picking action. This allows the attack zone to be broadened, and it also allows the defensive wing to get an inside position. Once having made that move, the low post comes up, positions the chair such that his front caster is inside or in line with the back of the inside wheel of the player he's attempting to pick. By taking such an alignment, he overplays to the outside, which allows more room for the driving guard to come around and to rub off the defensive wing. As the wing drives around the pick, she cuts close enough to that chair to minimize the distance between the 2, and again to help preclude the possibility of the defensive wing fitting through the pick. As she drives to the baseline, the player who set the pick tries to hold the line between the defensive wing and the basket till 10 switches. Once the defensive low post switches, the player setting the pick turns 90 degrees and turns to the basket. Now let's look at a low-high pick at normal speed. Now let's look at a low-high pick in an actual scrimmage. To set a low-high pick on the left side defensive wing, The low post on the left side will first give a fake away from the pick, and then will then move up and establish a position behind the defensive wing. Offensive player number 13 will concurrently give a fake away from this action and will then drive toward the baseline.
Watch your pick, watch your pick. You got a pick.
The high-low pick, which is also executed in a plane which is parallel to the sideline or the free throw lane, is typified by a pick wherein the player farthest from the basket picks down for a player closer to the basket, such as, in this situation, a wing guard picking down for a forward in the low post. To execute this pick, again, both players will give fakes away from the action, and the wing will drive down and pick for the low post forward, placing the caster behind the wheel, closest wheel, and allowing an overplay to accommodate the forwards driving around and screening off the low post defender. As the low post defender drives to the top of the key, the player that set the pick looks to the inside and, when clear, turns to the basket. Now let's look at a high-low pick at normal speed. Now let's see a high-low pick in an actual scrimmage. In this scrimmage situation, player number 24 will initiate the high-low pick by first faking away from the pick movement and will then drive down and position his chair behind the low post defender. Concurrently, the low post offensive forward will fake away from the movement and will then drive up toward the free throw line. When the defense switches, the player that sets the pick will drive to the basket. To execute a cross pick, which is performed in a plane parallel to the baseline, the point guard, number 42, will initiate the pick with a fake away. He will turn and approach the wing to set a pick on the defensive wing, number 32, by setting the right front caster in line with the back of the outside tire of the defensive wing. Concurrently, the wing guard, after giving a fake away, turns and comes behind the picker close enough to preclude the defensive player chasing between the two on the outside. Coming around the pick, she'll bring the defensive player over to the middle of the lane, and once that player has left the zone, the player that set the pick will turn to the basket and look for the ball. Now let's look at a cross pick at normal speed. Now let's look at a cross pick in an actual scrimmage situation. To set a cross pick on the right side defensive wing, the player at the point will first pass the ball to the left side wing, will then give a fake away from the direction of the pick, and will then move and position her chair behind the defensive wing. The offensive wing will concurrently fake away from the pick and drive around the pick. Once the defensive players switch, the player that sets the pick should be able to break open to the basket. Unlike the high-low, low-high, and cross picks where the offensive players are facing each other, a reverse pick occurs when the two offensive players ultimately begin the pick facing in the same direction. A reverse pick, additionally, can occur in either a plane that runs parallel to the baseline or to the sideline. In this reverse pick, the offensive guard, number 13, will fake away and drive to the inside of the defensive player, number 10, positioning her chair such that her inside rear wheel is just slightly behind the left wheel of the defensive guard. Number 42 will now give a push forward to fake, and then will pull back and spin in on the reverse. This action specifically will preclude the possibility of the defensive wing chasing on the outside and stopping the pick. As 42 reverses, he will move 10 feet away from the pick in an attempt to draw the defensive player number 32 away. Having succeeded in that, the player that set the pick can turn, go to the basket. Now let's look at the reverse pick at normal speed. Now let's look at a reverse pick in an actual scrimmage. Having failed in their attempt to set a successful cross pick on the right wing, the player that attempted the pick will now merely back up and reestablish her position between the defensive player and the basket. Once this position has been established, the offensive player for whom the pick was being set will give a slight fake forward, will then back up behind the defensive player, and then spin and drive opposite the pick. Once the defense switches, the player that set the pick will drive to the basket.